Like there was so much imposter syndrome that I carried for a really, really long time. And even though like in the community I was known as like the smart nerdy girl, I don't know that I ever felt that way truly. And then I felt like I was like constantly trying to prove to myself, even in med school and residency and fellowship, that I was like smart enough to be here. And then coming into this position at this academic center, I feel like I've been having to do it all over again.
You are listening to the Pinnacle Podcast, where we empower women in medicine through education, community, and actionable strategies for both the practice and the business of medicine.
Medicine is a lifelong career, and continuing education is crucial for professional development. Pinnacle is the first and only multi-specialty organization dedicated to addressing the challenges that all women in healthcare face.
Welcome to Pinnacle, the elite professional community providing education for women in medicine. At Pinnacle, we challenge you to pave your own path by helping you develop the skills needed to not only stay in medicine, but to excel.
Welcome to the Pinnacle Prescription Podcast. I'm your host today, Dr. Pamela Mehta, and today I am joined by Dr. Farah Khan. Farah Khan is an allergy immunologist. She's the assistant professor of pediatrics at Nationwide Children's Hospital and the Ohio State University College of Medicine. She graduated from Allergy Immunology Fellowship in 2020 with a brief stint in private practice, and now she works in academic medicine. She is married with a 5-year-old son, and we are here to chat all the things about being a woman in medicine and being an academic. So nice to have you here today, Farah.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Tell us your story, how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. I'm going to try to be as honest and open as possible because you and I were talking about this before, but I feel like a lot of us share just small parts and keep really big parts sort of secretive or to ourselves because we don't think it's normal and we don't think it's normal to talk about it. So I'm a first generation Pakistani Muslim American. I was born and raised in DC in the burbs, and I was the first kid to go to college, first kid to do grad school, first kid to do med school and all the things. And there was nobody else that showed me the path. I kind of had to figure it out on my own, right? So even taking out like student loans and stuff, which I'm still paying back, by the way,
Forever, right?
forever. It was a very long journey. My dad actually got really sick when I was in elementary school. And so I grew up with a parent who was chronically ill, and I interacted with the healthcare system way more than I probably needed to. And I think when you're a first generation kid, some of that happens because I was the translator for my mom, who had like some broken English, and she's much better now, but that wasn't the case 20 years ago when we were navigating the system and all the things that come with like insurance companies and all that jazz. So when my patients and families go through it, I'm like, yeah, it all is kind of terrible. But yeah, so that's sort of just like a very big picture view of sort of me. And then eventually at some point in pediatric residency, I got married. I never thought I was going to get married.
Why?
Um,
Why did you never think you were going to get married?
I was always like the nerdy brown girl. Like my head was always in a book. My nose was always in a book. Like I just never thought it was going to happen for me. I didn't really date, and it was just, I don't know. And then happened to get set up with my husband from like mutual family friends when I was back home from med school. And in residency, I was actually living with my parents, which was great because my mom was doing all the home cooking and my dad was around. It was great. But then I happened to meet my husband and we sort of hit it off, and then the rest is history. And we have a now 6-year-old, which is kind of crazy.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome to hear. So, okay, I'm going to ask you this. Is he Pakistani?
He is. He is
Okay.
also a first generation Pakistani American. It's kind of insane that like things lined up that way. For my parents, it was really important for me to marry somebody within the culture, right? Like they
Yes.
had to be Pakistani, they had to be Muslim. And for me, it was just I needed somebody who sort of lined up with like bigger life goal.
You needed more than just that they were Pakistani and Muslim. Yes.
Yes, yes. So when he checked a lot of the boxes for me and then happened to be Pakistani and Muslim, that was nice for my parents to just be like, okay, like this shouldn't be a terrible decision.
Okay. And you said that you got married in residency.
I did. I chose a random weekend when I knew I was going to go into like the 2 week vacation because some programs you can split up your vacations, but for us in residency we got 2 2 week breaks in a
Yeah,
year.
I know. I think that's something for our younger listeners that are debating going to medical school or in medical school that you may not realize is that when you get to residency, your vacations are dictated in some format by your program. And so I remember when I was an intern, you had to take your 4 weeks off in one chunk. You got a whole month off. Yeah, it was
No.
crazy. So you went so many months without a vacation, but for their calendaring and their organization, it was just easier to say all interns, you just get 1 month off in a chunk, which can be great because you can do something really amazing for that month, but also logistically is not great in a lot of ways as well. So, like you just said, in your residency, you got 2 2 week
Yeah.
blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, while we were wedding planning, she was like, "Oh, you should take the 2 weeks leading up to the wedding." And I was like, heck no, I am not doing that. That sounds like a giant waste of time. And I'm not going to have another vacation for like months and months. So we picked like a random weekend that was going to go into my 2 week break. And then we used that 2 week break to like travel and go on our honeymoon. But it took some planning and logistics, and like nobody talks to you about that stuff when you're a med student or applying, right? You just think like, oh, all the pieces will fall together and people will accommodate. But there's so much more to navigate. It's not just a random like, okay, I'm getting married on this date kind of thing that happens.
No, I think that a lot of people have to just kind of fit their life around the residency schedule, whether that's getting married or having children or attending other people's weddings and events. And it is not something talked about pre-residency, people going into it. It's really just something that you're expected to do and follow once you're in your training. So take me back to medical school and choosing pediatrics. Did you know that you were going to be a pediatrician? Did you know at the time you wanted to be an allergist? How did that all happen?
No, it was all so random. So I did my general surgery rotation first and I fell in love with it. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And it like synced up with like not really wanting a personal life. I mean, we know how, I don't have to tell you because you're in the surgical specialty. Like it's just very hard to balance marriage and family. Not to say that you can't do it, but I was like, I don't really want to get married or have kids anyway. Like I just want to be a workaholic and this is kind of great. So when I was applying to residencies, I actually applied and interviewed for both general surgery. And then I happened to fall in love with teenagers on my pediatrics rotation. I was like, this is such a funny group, and I would love to work with adolescents, and maybe adolescent medicine is my calling. And it's so different, right? Like general surgery versus adolescent.
Yeah, and also probably not a lot of people love working with that population because they're angsty and there's a lot of hormones
Yes.
going on in that age group.
Yes. And I was like, I will sit here all day long and counsel about like safe sex if I need to. So I actually applied and interviewed for both pediatrics and general surgery. And then when you sit down to make your match list, it's like you have to make some really big life decisions and then be at the mercy of a algorithm. And I was like, if I'm going to do pediatrics, I'm going to do it at my top choice. And that's it. That's all I want to do. So my number one choice was the pediatric program where I ended up matching. And then like number two, three, four, and five were general surgery programs. So my life could have been very, very
Very different. Correct.
yeah. So that's how I landed in pediatrics. And then when I was in residency, I knew I was going to be a terrible primary care physician. I knew I was going to be a terrible general pediatrician because of all of the demands that I was seeing when I was in my primary care clinics. So then it was just a matter of figuring out like what specialty is gonna do it for me. And I was one of those residents that really liked a little bit of everything. I liked the PICU, I liked the NICU, I liked cardiology. I thought I was gonna do GI, and then I married somebody who's in GI, so I was like, I can't do that. And then I did my allergy rotation, and I just fell in love with my mentor, who's just wonderful. And she was like, every allergist that you ever meet is going to be so happy. And I was like, great, I can sign up for that.
Yeah, it actually it does make a difference. A lot of the younger women that may be listening, you feel that you should choose a specialty based on what the contents of that specialty are, but in truth, at least in my opinion, you should choose the things around it as well. The coworkers you'll
Hmm.
be, working with, some of the ancillary staff, kind of some of the way the schedule is, the patients that you're going to see, So I think that is important also, is to be really kind of happy about the colleagues that are in your field as well.
Yeah, and I think med students and residents are having healthier discussions around lifestyles, probably because of how medicine people in medicine are intersecting with social media and what they're consuming and stuff. So more people in training are more vocal, I think, about being more conscientious about like what does a lifestyle look like. So it's not just like, oh, it's sexy and fast paced, and that's why I want to be an ER doc and just do shift work, right? People are being very thoughtful now. Like, man, emergency medicine docs are really burned out thanks to the pandemic, but also like, the match rates have declined. Like, there's just a lot of things that are happening. I think there's a much bigger conversation that's happening that was not happening when I was making these decisions. And that was not that long ago.
Yeah. No, it is great. The more that we have these conversations, I think it's better for our profession in general.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did your pediatric residency, and then you chose to do allergy immunology. Tell us about that process of applying to fellowship and how that was.
Um, it was just kind of a mess. I mean, it's all very messy, right? There's like a bunch of forms, there's ERAS, there's like a bunch of boxes that you have to check. It's all very stressful. What was interesting for me on a personal level was, so I got married my second year of residency, and then shortly thereafter, I think I had to apply for fellowships. Um, and it was it was just hard because it was like my husband was already done with training. He was a full-time physician in academics, and it's not like I could just move him, right? Like there were going to
Yeah.
be some consequences that he was going to have to figure out as well. And that was probably really tough for me to figure out how to navigate that next step and the next decision with someone else and considering someone else's career, which I was like, this is why nobody should get married, because it's so much easier to make those decisions by yourself.
For yourself, correct. So that's, again, you bring up a great point. Like in residency, you're expected just to follow these rules that are set out, that are, no other field has something like this in corporate America. And then you're supposed to just shove your personal life into this box of, you're already married, you've got someone done, and with their training, he has a full-fledged job. What are you going to do here? There aren't a lot of options unless you want to do a long distance marriage.
Yeah, which I mean, in your first or second year of marriage, when you're still figuring out how to live with somebody, and I had never lived with a male before, like there was just a lot that we had to sort through. So it was tough in that way to kind of narrow the list down and figure out what programs to apply to and stuff. We came up with a list that made sense for us at the time. I sort of cast a broad net, and he made a good point. He was like, it's not really an option if you don't get an interview with the program. So just apply widely, see what happens. And then when you sit down to make the rank list, then we can kind of figure things out. And by the time I sat down to make the rank list, I was pregnant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there was like another layer of, I'm going to say complication, but I don't mean that in a negative way. It was just like another really, really big factor suddenly to take into account. Um, and I happened to match at a program that was not too far from DC where we were living. And when I started my first year of fellowship, I was starting my third trimester. So I was just like big and waddling around and breathless and like also trying to be a first year fellow. And I was commuting back and forth from DC to Richmond. And I was spending an hour and a half to 2 hours each way. almost every day.
Yeah.
And it was just really tough. And then after, I had I was pregnant forever, and then I got induced, and then I had like a complication. I needed a C-section. I had a terrible recovery, like just all the things that you sort of accumulate as just being a woman. And there's never a good time to have a baby in medicine for a woman ever. It doesn't matter if you're
I'm
in
glad
med
that
school.
you said that. I agree completely. And so, my advice to women is do it when it works for you because
Yes.
it is not going to work at any stage. I mean, I know in some specialties, like your last couple of years, a little easier,
Yes.
but there's always some hardship associated with it. You also have no idea what your pregnancy is going to be like, if it's going to be complicated.
Mhm.
I would actually even venture to say that your first few years as an attending are some of the hardest because you're now the person
Yes.
making all of the decisions. So, I mean, I had my kids around that time, and I feel like, gosh, I wish someone had told me that I'm finally a grown up and I'm going to be the one in charge of everything, and maybe now is not the time to have a child and be worried about somebody at home.
But see, never a good time, right? Because when you were probably in residency, you were working like a bazillion hours a week. Your body was so tired. And like, how do you take care of somebody? I know women have babies in like training in med school and residency. I honestly don't know how they do it. I
Yeah.
barely survived it in fellowship.
Well, you were married, so you had a partner at home. I was completely single and literally took care of no one but myself, but I watched people around me take care of partners, parents, kids, pets. I was like, how is everyone doing this? How's everyone doing this?
Yeah, it's so hard. And then, like we were continuing to like I was driving back and forth. My for I only have one kid, but he was a terrible sleeper, which meant I got no sleep, and I was up at like 3:30 in the morning to like pump a bottle so that he could have something to feed in the morning. And then I was like, rushing down to Richmond, working a full day, and then pumping in the car, like just all the things that go into it. And I mean, pumping is like a whole like that's just a whole nother topic, but it also just like makes you feel like you're inconveniencing everybody around you, right? Like I felt so guilty for stepping out of clinic every day, every session, right? Because I needed to pump or my boobs would explode. You know what I mean? Like, and it was always like a surprise to the attendings, like, what? You're still pumping? And I felt guilty for taking that time.
Yeah.
So never a good time.
Never a
You
good
just,
time. So you just kind of do it when you can. And um, I do think there need to be more conversations about supporting young women in their fertility
Mhm.
journeys and having children and making space and time and support for that. And I think we're worlds away from that.
Yes.
And so I hope that with a little bit more, at least awareness, then comes advocacy and,
Mhm.
being able to advocate for others that are younger than us and in helping them in that journey as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you're a fellow. And how did you decide what your career path was going to look like? You have a young child, you're, kind of at the end of your training. How did you make those decisions?
COVID made some decisions for me.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So I graduated from fellowship at the summer of 2020. So we were literally just a few months in, people were still figuring things out. I had started interviewing with like private practices and the big academic center in DC when I was supposed to, like, early second year of fellowship. And I had interviewed, I had a bunch of job offers, and then when the pandemic happened, literally the world shut down overnight. And that's not even exaggeration, right? Like all of us felt that, like we were all closing our offices. And so all of the local allergists and the academic centers went into hiring freezes and had offers rescinded. So I graduated without a job, which I was only unemployed for a month, but I cried rivers every day because everything felt so anticlimactic, right? Like I had just spent 10 years in training. Like this was supposed to be the thing that gave me the job security. And then the pandemic happens, right? Like how was I ever supposed to predict?
Yeah.
Um, so it was really hard. And I kept at it. And then one of the local private practices was looking for somebody part-time. And I was like, I'll take it. it was fine as like my first job, but I was paid hourly. I had no benefits, like it was just not ideal, but I said yes because that was all I had at the time. And I had a young kid and I needed some flexibility. So I took the job, and then my husband decided to have his own like midlife crisis with his career. And then he was like, I'm gonna go back into training. I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this. So then we moved to Florida, where it felt like the pandemic didn't even happen when we got there in 2020. Unfortunately. And then so we were there for a year and a half, and then sort of he needed to find the next big fit for him. And that's how we both ended up in Columbus, Ohio. And I have been with my current practice for a little over 2 years in academics now. So
So he decided to take on another fellowship?
mhm. Yeah, he's
Wow.
a peds GI doc, and he does interventional endoscopy, but you need a year of training. So he was like, I'm gonna go do this. And so now he's in his happy place now. Like he's exclusively scoping and just procedures and loves it, and he's thriving. I
And is he
am
academic as well? Is he at the
He
same
is.
center? Okay, so you guys are
Mhm.
both academic physicians.
Yes, yes, which makes
But
for
what a
very
crazy pathway, because again, there's nothing mapped out after training for you as a
Mhm.
physician. We are on this track, and it's pretty, I mean, it's bumpy, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of self-explanatory. And
Yes.
there's rules and a pathway. You're not creating it. You're applying for the next thing. But then when you get out, and I don't think, again, anyone prepares you for this, there is no guide or map to what you're supposed to do. And like you said, you've got this other physician in your house that is now wanting to do something different. And so I think a lot of also listeners could learn from this that there is so many ways to take on a job after your training. I mean, there's locums work, there's part-time work, there's, being, a contractor within a practice.
Mhm.
You don't have to have a full-time academic role, employed role, start a practice. There's all these other things that you can do if you're in kind of a waiting interim stage. And maybe that means, like you said, you're waiting for your husband to finish his midlife crisis, or maybe you're
Exactly.
trying to have a kid or something, or trying to live your life because you've been, under the shackles of training for so long. But I do want people to hear that there's lots of things you can do after your training. It doesn't need to be you're taking your end all be all job.
Yeah, and I think that's what I stress to the fellows that work with us and come through our program now is that no job is perfect, and it doesn't have to look like what you thought it was going to look like when you started all of this, right? And it's okay to do all this training and then come out and maybe take a non-clinical job if that works for you and your family and all the other things that women have to balance, whether it's starting a family or taking care of elderly parents, or all that stuff. And that's what I want them to hear, because I didn't hear that. I just felt like, oh, now, I trained at a large academic center and I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. And then when I had to pivot to private practice or even like looking at those jobs, I was like, am I supposed to feel gross? Like, is this okay? Like all of the stigma that comes along with some of this stuff, like, oh, you're selling out, you're working in private practice. And it's like, it's not a sellout, right? Like we need to stop stigmatizing people. We're still providing care. So,
Yeah. That is something that's not talked about at all as well. Because when you're in academics for residency, if you're at an academic program and not a community program, those people often feel this is the way that you have to
yep.
practice medicine. You have to be at a high powered academic place. You should be doing some research. Part time is a no no.
Hmm.
And they really look down, or I'm not going to speak for all of them, but many of them look down upon the private practice doctors or the employed doctors at a big system.
Yep.
And I think that I also felt a little when I first started my employee job, like these surgeons aren't going to be as good as the people at Columbia. And that was absolutely wrong. Okay. Some of the best surgeons I've ever worked with were
Yeah.
at an employed, hospital system kind of in the middle of, Los Angeles, not at a big center or anything. So I think that's a fallacy as well. And again, nobody talks to us about that. So we don't know all
Yeah.
the options out there.
Yeah. So that's what I want that's what I want any resident or fellow or even early attending to like listening to this episode is you can literally make it whatever you want it to be, and nobody else's expectations should matter. You make it work for you.
I love that. Nobody else expectations should matter. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's you living your life and you fulfilling the parts that you need to fulfill for your career and your life.
exactly.
Okay, so now we're in academics in Ohio.
Yeah.
Tell me how that works as a Pakistani Muslim American woman.
Um, it's been an adjustment. I think I'm still adjusting. I was born and raised in DC. I'm very much like a East Coast girl at heart. Like I'm, like I just all of the stereotypes, I embody all of them and I brought them to the Midwest.
Culture shock over there.
So it's taken some folks some time to get used to like my directness and my personality, but it's been a little adjustment. My family is still back in the DC area, so I miss them. But I think it's been nice to kind of get away and also have like our own little like us figuring it out as a family and a unit has also been really great. And then the stuff with work. So I'm full time right now. And it's really hard because I'm married to another physician and it literally takes one fever, one flat tire, one of anything to for the entire day slash week to fall apart.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so
if
what
you
resources do you have? Tell us what resources you have around you, what support system you have around you to help you with those because oftentimes women don't really share that. And on social media especially it feels like some of these women are just doing it all on their own.
Yeah. So we've made some good friends, which has helped. So if there's like a, hey, my kid is sick and I can't get to the store for like Gatorade and soup, I can like make a call, right? I can also call Uber, right? But like I have friends checking in on me. And my friends that live very far away, they check in not physically, but like sending messages at least. So I've kept that community. And my girlfriends that I've known since like middle school and high school and college are still very much a part of my daily life. But other than that, I'm gonna be totally honest. Like, there's nobody else here. Like, we don't have any family
Wow.
that we could just be like, hey, mom, like, can you come and watch my kid for a couple of hours while I go run and do clinic for a quick session? So it's very hard because my husband and I end up relying on each other. The one thing that I have outsourced is cleaning.
Good
I've
for
taken
you.
that off my plate. So
Yeah.
cleaning service comes in every 2 weeks, and that's really it. And I need to figure out a way to like offload and outsource some more stuff. But it's really hard when you're like a type A neurotic person for somebody to even fold your laundry.
No, that is part of the problem that we have. We've been doing it for
Yes.
so long ourselves in this perfectionistic way that it's so hard to delegate and to be like, I'm going to let this go and it's okay to let it go.
Yes. 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 Like for me to even let go of cleaning was like, oh my God, I'm selling out generations of hardworking brown women.
Isn't that terrible though? It's
It's
terrible.
terrible. It's terrible. So I'm working on like letting things go and, you know, outsourcing, but it's hard because of expectations we have of ourselves as well, and adjusting the narrative for ourselves as well, and then being able to execute that in real life.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you're an East Coast girly that, now you're in the Midwest. Tell me more about that adjustment.
Um, It's been really hard. It still feels really lonely and like I'm totally isolated. And the way that the job stuff sort of worked out, it was really the more that like my husband was recruited to the institution, right? And
Ah,
then
yes,
like a
the
space
husband.
was found,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Right?
Not
Right?
that you've trained for so many years and
Right.
have this specialty, but that you were recruited because of your husband. I have heard
Right.
this story before in
Right.
my own life.
And
Yeah, my husband's an orthopedic surgeon just like me, and so he got his job. We both had jobs, but then one of us needed to move for the other, and I was moving towards him and again made to feel that they created this space for me even though I had a job within the same hospital system just several hours away. Yes. And I did train, at a nice academic institution myself, but
See, why does that get taken away from female physicians if they're also married to physicians? Like, it's insane. And
yeah.
it just felt gross. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
totally honest. Like, it just felt gross. I was like, he didn't do all this training. Like, that's me. I have those board certifications, but it very much was like that was not the message that I got. And so I show up, I do the job, I take care of my patients, and that's kind of how I feel about it right now. I'm hoping that I can move past that and it like evolves into something else. But when you're made to feel that way, right? And you also look very different from your colleagues. I am not white. I am a
Yeah.
woman. Like there's just lots of things that you're still having to deal with and get over, even when you're just walking into the conference room in 2025 when you're a female physician in medicine.
Yeah. So how do you center yourself? How do you still practice with some joy and not let those feelings around you and those perceptions get to you? What are the tools that you have for that?
Therapy.
Okay. I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I think everybody needs to be in therapy.
Yes. Yes. Which is also like a separate issue, but like I didn't grow up with believing in therapists and stuff, right? That was not what I was
Not a South
hearing.
Asian
It was
thing at all.
no, it was like very much taboo and stuff like, oh, you're crazy if you're seeing somebody. And it took me a really long time to even get to a point to like start seeing a therapist. I actually started seeing a therapist when we moved down to Florida for my husband's fellowship because I felt like I was gonna lose all of my marbles. Um, with like COVID and then having to figure out work and having a young toddler and all those things. So therapy has helped significantly. And then having like a solid group of girlfriends who check in every single day. Not with every single one, but like every week, I know what's going on with them. They know what's going on with me. And that's honestly been the thing that centers me.
That is great, that support system. In that group of people that you lean on and they lean on you, are they other medical professionals? Are they other women of color? Do you think that's
Yeah,
a piece of
most of
this?
them are. Yeah, most of
So
them
it's
are.
that
So,
sharing of
mhm,
common stories and
yeah.
commonality.
Yeah, like, can you believe so and so said something like this, or I was made to feel right? And what I've realized is that I'm not alone. So even though I'm like an East Coast brown, South Asian female physician in the Midwest, like there's stories like this all over the country. It's
Yeah.
not just me. So
And that does help. I remember that when I was facing some of my own discrimination when I was pregnant, it felt very much like, did I do something wrong? Like, this
mm,
can't be something that happens to other people. So it has to be me. I kept putting it on myself. Like, it has to be something I did. Like, this can't be something that's rampant. Well, it turns out it is rampant and it's out there. And so
yep,
I do think, as for me, as a woman in medicine, especially in a surgical specialty, I had to see that to feel stronger and to be like, okay, it's not me. It's this system that
mhm,
I'm a part of. So
yeah,
I do think one nice thing about Pinnacle is just finding people that are like you and struggling with the same things and not feeling alone in that.
yep, yep, exactly.
Okay, so what's in the future for you? So you're in this job that you sound like you're happy with your patients and
Yeah,
and and the medicine aspect of it, but
yes.
where do you see yourself in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? Do you still think you'll be here? Do you think you'll be doing something different? What is your dream?
I don't even know how to answer that if I'm being completely honest. I think for most physicians in America right now, and the way that so many external factors are impacting how we practice and the care that we deliver, whether it's, administrative junk or politics or DEI initiative, like everything is impacting how we practice and how we show up. And even before COVID, we were like headed, like there were so many physicians that were burned out, right? And then COVID put a bunch of people over the edge, and
Especially women, because we took on so much
especially
more
women.
in the home as well.
Yes, I mean, you know it better than I do. Like you work probably a few full-time jobs
Yeah. No,
in addition.
you had a toddler. I had three children, well, two children in school and a baby. was probably the best thing that ever happened to my baby because she got her whole family around her.
Yeah.
It was good for her. But yeah, I mean, I think that really was very difficult for women managing their families and their practices as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
okay, so you
So I
haven't
know.
figured it out yet.
Yeah.
That's obviously okay, and it's a lot of women in medicine and Pinnacle as well.
Yeah.
What would you like to tell your younger self?
It's gonna be okay. Stop being so freaking anxious all the time.
Get some
Yeah, like
therapy
there
for
was
that.
get some therapy, get into therapy early. Like there was so much imposter syndrome that I carried for a really, really long time. And even though like in the community I was known as like the smart nerdy girl, I don't know that I ever felt that way truly. And then I felt like I was like constantly trying to prove to myself, even in med school and residency and fellowship, that I was like smart enough to be here. And then coming into this position at this academic center, I feel like I've been having to do it all over again, and like I care less about what other people think now. So I'm much more calm and like less anxious about other people and their feelings on things. But as a 20-year-old, just very anxious and in
Yeah.
my head all the time.
Well, that's some great advice for your younger self. And we also like to have our guests share a pinnacle pearl. And so that could be for women of your own age group in the same season of life that would be a woman coming to Pinnacle. What would you share from where you're at right now in your life? You've admitted that you're not sure what the next 5 to 10 years looks like. You're fairly happy in your job right now, but
Yeah.
what would be your pinnacle pearl?
I think it would be to be honest with other female physicians, even if you have not befriended them, especially if you're joining a new practice, right? Because then everybody feels like they have to like be at their on their best behavior, and you can't show any struggles, and you can't talk about things that are like not going that well. And I think it ends up impacting your overall experience. And when you start talking to other women about it, everybody's going through the same thing. And I think just having that transparency, which I did not have in med school or residency, and finally came to it in the last few years, I realized how much more empowering that is. Because yes, I can be frustrated that I'm working long hours and have all this charting to do, but I'm not the only one who's doing it.
I love that. I think we women also put up a lot of walls because we've had to survive.
Hmm.
And I think at some point we have to let some of those walls down, especially with our female colleagues. And
Yeah.
we all have to really work on supporting each other versus being pitted against each other and all having weird defense mechanisms and walls
Yeah.
around each other. And think
Yes.
and thinking that, there's only going to be room for one of us there. Like, no, there's room for a lot of us actually. And if there's not, we should make it that way. And the way to make it that
Yes.
way is to let down our walls and support each other. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
No, I have loved having you, and I wish we had more time. But let our listeners know where they can find you for a little inspiration and also to see what you're going to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years since you're not even
when
sure yet.
Once I figure it out. I'm mostly active on Instagram. It's my first and last. So farah.con.md. I do a lot of general allergy education for parents and families and patients, and other healthcare professionals have found me there, but that's where I'm usually hanging out.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Farah. It's been really great to talk to you today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Pinnacle Podcast, where we strive to elevate the voices of women in medicine and inspire excellence across the healthcare landscape. Until next time, keep reaching for your pinnacle.